Imagine a medieval castle deep in the English countryside. Damp walls, torches flickering, but the prisoner inside is no common criminal. In this very fortress, Pevensey Castle in Sussex, dwelt Queen Joan of Navarre, accused of a most sensational crime, plotting her stepson's death by sorcery. In 1419, Joan, wife of Henry IV and stepmother to Henry V, was suddenly treated as a witch. Why? The charges against her were as extreme as they were dubious. Allegedly, she had delved into necromancy and black magic to kill the king. What sounds like the plot of a gothic novel was a real political drama. Today we unravel how and why a medieval queen came to be labeled as a sorceress, and what it tells us about power, fear, and the women who bore the brunt of suspicion. Joan of Navarre, born 1368 to 1437, was no ordinary lady. Born to royalty in Navarre, a kingdom straddling the Pyrenees, she first became Duchess of Brittany by marriage. Highly respected and competent, she even ruled Brittany as regent when her husband died in 1399. Later, she caught the eye of England's King Henry IV. They married in 1403, making Joan Queen of England. Although their marriage produced no children, Joan became stepmother to Henry's son, Prince Henry, the future Henry V. By all accounts, she strove to be a loving stepmother. Remarkably, when Henry V campaigned in France in 1415, Queen Joan was appointed regent of England in his absence, a sign of deep trust. Even after Henry IV's death, Joan remained in England and was treated with honor. Henry V reportedly called her his dearest mother and allowed her special privileges, living in royal castles, wearing knightly garter robes, and even negotiating a truce with Brittany at her behest. As late as 1418, he granted her goods duty-free. By all appearances, Joan was a respected dowager queen with both influence and compassion. So it shocked everyone in 1419 when Henry V turned on her with grave charges. See, on September 29, 1419, Joan's world was upended. According to the official parliamentary record, Joan's own confessor, Friar Randolph, testified that she had been compassing the death and destruction of our Lord the King in the most treasonable and horrible manner that could be devised. In other words, Randolph claimed the Queen plotted regicide. Even more chilling, he alleged that Joan had enlisted two domestic sorcerers and was dealing with powers of darkness to achieve her evil aim. In plain terms, these were accusations of witchcraft and black magic. However, word of her supposed occult scheme spread throughout the court, feverish with rumors of witchcraft. Joan was accused of dark arts such as necromancy and sorcery, effectively painting her as a medieval witch out to murder her stepson, the king. Modern historians note how vague these claims were. The specifics of Joan's magic were never clear, no potions or spells were demonstrated. As one account summarizes, she was simply said to have tried to kill King Henry V in the most evil and terrible manner. These were allegations, but no real evidence. The supposed witnesses and items confiscated, pins, cloth, and herbs from her chapel, were mostly mundane. Despite this, the testimony woven from superstition and suspicion was enough to trigger Joan's downfall. It was an astonishing episode, unique in the history of medieval queens, a queen accused of murder by magic of all things. Joan was immediately seized on Henry V's orders and initially imprisoned at Pevensey Castle. In reality, this wasn't a torture chamber but a royal residence, and Joan was treated like a high-status prisoner. Very soon, she was moved inland to Leeds Castle in Kent, where she spent the next 2 years. Fun fact, Leeds Castle is often called the loveliest castle in the world. Even Joan's jail cell came with a moat and great views. Queen Joan's confinement was more like a privileged house arrest than torture. Contemporary records from her household show she continued to order luxury goods, fine furs, rich silks, spices, just as before. In fact, historian Alec Myers notes these purchases in her accounts, concluding the king did not believe that she had been practicing witchcraft in a treasonous way. Why keep such a supposed assassin so closeted? Joan's confinement at Leeds Castle was hardly the treatment of one allegedly seeking the death of its owner. Despite being stripped of her lands and income, she and her ladies still dined well. The king's officers collected the profits of her estates for the war effort, but Joan herself was not physically harmed. In short, Joan was not put on trial nor executed for witchcraft. She was simply detained. This was a convenient arrangement for the crown. It silenced her and let the crown seize her wealth without a messy public trial. As one biographer later noted, the public charge of sorcery had become medieval royalty versions of the cry, "Mad Dog," a ready excuse to ruin someone even against whom no tenable accusation could be brought. Joan effectively paid the price of her freedom, whether guilty or not, by being locked away and stripped of all power. When scholars sift through this case, the astonishingly flimsy evidence and comfortable captivity point to political motives rather than any real belief in witchcraft. Consider the context. Henry V's wars in France had drained the royal coffers. By accusing Joan of treason, he allegedly confiscated her enormous dower lands and income. The royal council had obvious political and financial advantages in the witchcraft charge, essentially stealing a rich widow's wealth for the crown. Joan was also a powerful foreign queen dowager whose estates spanned England, Normandy, and Brittany. Removing her eliminated a potential rival faction, perhaps Queen Joan's first marriage ties, and prevented any alliance against the king. In medieval Europe also, powerful women, especially foreign-born queens, were often targets of suspicion. Labeling Joan a witch played on a popular fear of female magic. The campaign against her had the ring of a scapegoat hunt. As Strickland observed, calling someone a sorcerer was the easiest way to turn public opinion and destroy them. In short, the witchcraft allegations were likely a cover story. They provided a dramatic excuse to sideline Joan and seize her property. Many historians conclude that Henry V simply wanted her money, to use Dr. Rowena Archer's words. These motives explain why no real trial took place and why Joan was treated well despite the grave charge. No evidence and no verdict. Not surprisingly, no genuine proof ever emerged that Joan used occult arts. Medieval witch trials genuinely needed some sort of confession or witness, but here none of that occurred. All we have are Randolph's sensational statements and empty allegations. In fact, analysis of Joan's household accounts makes it clear she didn't need to starve. Rich Queen's purse still funded her lavish needs, even under arrest. This, plus her honorable service as Henry's regent, suggests the king himself didn't truly believe her guilty of regicide. Moreover, Joan's profile was the opposite of a typical witch. She was in her 50s, deeply religious, and had borne 9 children for Brittany's duke. She was universally described as pious and respectable. As one historian put it, a more unlikely candidate for necromancy it would be hard to imagine. Indeed, the only plausible magic Joan had practiced was the political craft of maintaining alliances, certainly not any dark curse. After nearly 3 years, the witch hunt abruptly ended. In July 1422, Henry V's conscience, or his advisor's misgivings, got the better of him. On his deathbed, he issued an order to restore Joan to her rights. He wrote that he no longer wished to be charged in conscience by holding onto our mother, Queen Joan's lands. The writ even provided her with sufficient cloth for gowns and horses to travel to wherever she pleased, a humble apology for confining a queen. 6 weeks later, Henry V was dead, and Joan walked free, dignity formally restored. In the 1420s and 1430s, Joan lived quietly in her own courts, Nottingham Castle among others, and was fully re-entitled, eventually being buried alongside Henry IV at Canterbury when she died in 1437. She avoided any further political scandals. In retrospect, the only thing truly proven about Queen Joan is that she could survive a brush with witchcraft charges better than most, emerging with her life and reputation intact, if maybe somewhat a little tarnished. Joan of Navarre's ordeal is a vivid example of how gender and power intersected in medieval politics. The episode reveals that accusations of black magic are often less about actual sorcery and more about convenience and prejudice. As Dr. Archer and others conclude, the crime of witchcraft here was clearly used as a political weapon. Medieval England's governors jailed a witch queen not to punish dark arts, but to enclose a powerful woman within castle walls and seize her wealth. In a more light-hearted vein, the queen, dubbed a witch, ended up pampered, not poped, and she spent her exile adorned in furs and fine laces. In fact, her comfort became something of a historical joke, as if the most dangerous witch in the kingdom needed a Moet and caviar break in her moat-surrounded castle. All joking aside, Joan's story has had a sombering legacy. It reminds us how fear and rumor can be wielded against those at the top, especially women. The charge of witchcraft stuck to Joan like a spooky glove, but the real finger that pointed at her was wrapped in royal ambition and sexism. As one 19th century commentator noted, witchcraft allegation was the medieval public's cry to destroy someone when no tenable accusation could be brought. Joan's life after 1422 suggests history judged the charges to be nonsense. Today, her case is often cited as a cautionary tale of false rumors. It exposes how quickly a queen's image can be twisted, and how dreadful allegations require nothing more than court gossip to ruin lives. In the end, Queen Joan's legacy is that of survival. No magical secret lies in the archives, only the lesson that power can make enemies of even your own family. What do you think? Was Joan entirely innocent, or might there have been unknown palace intrigues? Have you ever heard of other monarchs accused of occult crimes? Let us know in the comments with your theories or historical insights. History is full of mysterious tales. The more we share, the richer the story becomes.